And maybe we are live.
We
Hello,
are live.
everyone.
Ooh, hello.
Good afternoon, good morning, good night to
Yeah.
all of our listeners, all of our followers.
Guys, 2020, January 13th. I had to look at the calendar. I don't know what day it is, but 2020, we're bringing it to you again. Layer1Live. We got a ton of good stuff to get to this month. How are you guys doing in Pittsburgh? I'm going to be up there soon.
Yeah, we're excited, man. For those that are not familiar, who's this gentleman that's sitting next to me that we haven't seen in a while?
Special guest.
At the holidays, I think I'm finally over that sickness, whatever that was. Andrea gave me a pretty brutal head cold, so I appreciate you guys holding it down while I was gone. I'm going to make up for it today. Do not worry.
I got you. All right. The trading view just went off for a second. So, guys, I'm pulling it back up. I don't know why that happened. But we have a good episode. We got a ton of good news and some, standard trading news and all around the world. We're bringing you crypto stuff. We got some team updates to get to while I fix this trading view stuff. Do you want to get to that, Mike, real quick?
Yeah, definitely. So those of you that have been following us for some time now through IOST, super excited. We are tier 1 under their contribution rewards for Q4 2019. So those results came out. We're super pumped for that. We've never not gotten tier 1 with IOST. I think it's been kind of like 3.5 quarters now that have existed for that, where, essentially if you hold IOST, you can vote for certain nodes. And if that node essentially contributes enough to the IOST ecosystem, they'll get placed in one of 5 tiers where, obviously the tier 1, you as the voter gets the most rewards back. So we're super excited to be in that tier 1 again. We're obviously going for it in Q1 of 2020, really focusing on some more kind of, kind of institutional or partnership type work as we move into 2020, as we did, towards the end of 2019. It seems that IOST is kind of starting to move towards more like partnerships and enterprise and things like this, which we'll talk about later in the episode. But tier 1.
Yeah, for sure. And we're, like Mike said, we're going to talk about the IOST network later in the episode. So if you're listening to this after we're live, we will have timestamps in the description if you just want to hear about, contribution rewards and what we're doing with Settler Ventures on that IOST network. Feel free to click on that timestamp. But otherwise, we did have that $250 Bitcoin giveaway winner. He has received or should receive momentarily his Bitcoin. We're not going to do it on air for you guys, but Meta Crypto, congratulations again. Stick around, man. There's going to be a ton of good stuff that we're doing throughout the course of the next few months. But we do have the top 5 countries. We do have the top 3 episodes, so I'll touch on those. So we got USA, Ireland, Australia, Great Britain, and Germany. And then as far as the top 3 episodes, we've got the Wax episode with Malcolm Cassell, the IDEX episode with Alex Warren, and then the Telos episode with Douglas Horn. So thank you guys for continuing to listen to those, share it with your friends, and do all the things that you can. One thing we do need to touch on real quick, we haven't had an interview episode since, I believe, like the 24th. So it has been a second. We know you guys like those episodes, and we're going to continue putting those out. We have a stacked group in January. It's going to be a busy January for us, but we have... we got a comment. Subas, what up, guys, from the Netherlands, Amsterdam? What's going on, Subas? Nice to see you. Yeah, tell your friends about this podcast, man. Maybe the Netherlands will make it up to the top 5. But upcoming guests, man, this is crazy. We've got Snowball, which is kind of a Blockfolio type app where you're managing your portfolio. We have that on the 15th, so look for that to drop on the 15th. We got V Systems, which is another like proof of stake network that you can look into here. We've got Synthetics, Kane Warwick is going to be on the 23rd, and then we have Lolly at the end of the month, Alex Adelman, and also another member, Aubrey from their team. So kind of a double interview episode. But that's a ton, man, and we're going to have a lot of guests as we come on in February and March as well, and we're looking to bring the best. So whatever guests you guys want to hear, please let us know.
Yeah, let us know. You should see our list, on Google Drive. I mean, we got like pretty much every layer 1 protocol there that we're trying to reach out to. We're getting lots of love from lots of those layer ones. But if there's one that's up and coming, you know, maybe people haven't heard about it, but you feel like they should get some love, let us know. You know, drop us a email, you know, your link or something, right? We're happy to reach out. We want to get all the hottest layer ones on here and really hottest crypto projects as we kind of move into what may be a bullish 2020 for crypto, Deem, right?
Yeah,
It's a good start.
It is. Yeah, if you watch the Dimitri's desk for my projections for 2020, you will see what I'm thinking of.
Are you calling like a low and a high like BitMEX did, like somewhere between $0 and $1 million?
No. I give you the exact figure.
Oh,
it's gonna be. Yeah. I have the crystal ball.
What do you think?
Those episodes have been killing it, man. Every single episode we've been doing is just absolutely off the charts as far as with the way it's trending. It looks real nice, and Dimitri's desk is no exception, man. You're killing it over there, and people are starting to take notice. So
thanks, brother.
Congrats on that success.
I tip my hat to my viewers. You know, thank you for all the support.
If people haven't seen it, when can they tune in?
Tomorrow at 5 p.m. is your chance to take a look inside the market.
Boom.
And see what's going down there.
Yeah, he's been on point. You got at least three trading view charts that are just, you know.
Oh yeah, on my trading view calls. Yeah, so I sometimes post on trading view where you can hit the play button and see how those trades worked out. So far I have 3, and knock on wood, pretty good.
Nice. Well, we have a couple more comments to get to. We got Mr. Sheffield, also from the Netherlands. We got Brandon Cummings saying we need to get the Dapp Network guys on here. So you guys, we'll reach out to everybody. If you have a contact there, please let us know. But otherwise, we know some people that know some people, and we'll get these guys on the podcast shortly. We did not get banned by any BitTorrent subreddits, Reddit subreddits this week, so that's something to be happy about. Otherwise, we'll hit this news, man. We got a ton of quick news we're gonna get to. It's kind of like a new format, but go ahead.
Yeah, new feature here, right? We want to start you guys off with just some newsworthy points here that maybe don't need a ton of discussion, but are important to include regardless. So as we finished out 2019, both on News BTC and on Yahoo Finance, some interesting Dapp activity came out, where essentially Tron has officially passed EOS for Dapp activity. Overall, ETH, Tron, and EOS make up about 98% of that Dapp activity. So, a lot of Dapp chains out there, but those three seem to be leading right now. On the other side of crypto with BTC, so essentially there's a piece of data that you can track that involves kind of the country that is the largest receiver of Bitcoin. And to date, that has always been the US. But in 2019, Singapore took over. So in 2019, Singapore was the largest receiver of Bitcoin in 2019.
Yeah, that's some interesting stuff. In other news, we have BlockFi coming through now, offering USDC and Litecoin lending and borrowing. So if you guys have USDC or Litecoin, you can go to the platform and essentially earn interest on your holdings. And I believe they offer something like over 8% on
8.6 on USDC.
USDC, which is pretty good. We know those guys, they're legit, so you can go to their website blockfi.com and check them out, the rates and all that stuff.
When BlockFi interview?
Yeah, soon.
Hashtag soon.
Yeah. And then next piece of news, we have enabled margin trading on Binance for EOS. So EOS USDT margin trading is open. It's basically, you can trade with perpetual swaps that we know, that we've seen in the market already for Bitcoin. So Binance continues to roll that out. You can trade out with 75x leverage at the moment. So.
You can hit, I believe, XRPs on there as well. So, yeah, Binance Futures has got EOS USDT and XRP USD, which we'll talk about a little bit come EOS, but both have pumped a little bit since that.
Yep.
That happens.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff.
I felt like Dimitri for a little while. Dima, you liked my EOS price prediction when we were sitting at like 318. I was saying we're gonna have some type of pullback before that voice pump.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Because if if you watch the desk, I was talking about some interesting opportunities to take short positions in EOS where it comes up to
Mm.
specific levels, that give you a pretty good risk reward ratio there. So
My man. So basically, I copied you. Okay. So we've got we've got the Australian bushfires and Binance pledging $1 million in BNB. That's important, but $1 million to Australian brushfire causes. Obviously, that's happening over the past week and a half in Australia. You see a ton of people that are affected. You've got animal life that's been affected. Pretty much all of Australia is dealing with this right now. So Binance has pledged 1 million BNB. That kind of poses a little bit of issues. I don't think there's many charities in Australia right now that are accepting crypto and BNB at that. So I don't really know how they're going to do that off ramp. But it said in the article that that people on the ground are working with. I think it was one of the Binance charity foundations. Let me get this. But one of the Binance charity foundations organizers is working with crypto exchanges in Australia to get the necessary off ramps to get the people the money that they need after this. So it's definitely a good move on Binance's part. I think they've shown to be very charitable with their BNB. There's a lot of things that they're doing around the globe with that Binance Charity Foundation. So claps, for Binance.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So that is the kind of quick hitting news here. Like Q said, that's a new kind of section we're throwing in here. If you absolutely hated it, if you absolutely loved it, let us know either way. But some other kind of non-breaking news hitting here. Our friends over at Nervos Network, which is essentially a blockchain network that one of the largest Ethereum proof of work miners started after Ethereum announced they were going to officially move to proof of stake, has committed $30 million in grants to fund community developers and essentially other community members who are looking to build or kind of push forward Nervos. So we've obviously seen this a lot on a handful of other networks. Tezos is doing this. They're probably the best at it right now. ETH has done this traditionally. I mean, really, if you want to see your network grow in a decentralized way, you have to have funds there, to kind of grant people in order for them to keep building. So shout out to Nervos. We had an interview with their head of international marketing, Ben Waters. If you haven't checked that out, it's super interesting. I think Nervos is very unique because they're doing something that basically nobody else is doing at this point when it comes to kind of store of value assets that are non-Bitcoin on a blockchain. So shout out to those guys. They're continuing to move forward. If you remember from previous episodes, they have a partnership with the one of the largest banks in the world, the China Merchant Bank, who is supposedly supposed to be launching quote unquote decentralized apps on the Nervos Network blockchain. And based on their kind of clout within the industry, they've got a pretty top-notch network. I've been following this a little while now, especially over the last few weeks, because believe it or not, the public market token prices dropped well below their private sale price on CoinList. Yeah, it's down almost 40%. So it's under a penny. Interesting kind of buying up there. If you're, somebody who's what I would call a shitcoin deviant, a big time buyer of these ones, like I like to do. Love to hold bags.
That's 40% down from their private sale price.
So they launched on CoinList. They were oversubscribed. Where essentially CoinList kind of they'll say, hey, we're launching Nervos. They'll get interest. They were oversubscribed on kind of the pre-interest piece. They raised dozens of millions of dollars. Now it's all these partnerships, but yet you see the public sale token price now, I think almost 0.6 of a penny when the original private sale price was a flat penny. So, it's a classic story of fundamentals and public market price are not one for one, right? There's a lot that goes into it, and it's been struggling a little bit. So I've been keeping my eye on it.
For the private sales and those guys, institutional guys that hold this for a longer term, I'm pretty sure they have lockup periods. So
that's fair.
But for them, price fluctuation within the short term doesn't really matter. they're looking out for long term and see how that works out. So
yeah, the interesting thing, whenever I was talking to Ben about this a little bit, and he kind of shedded some light on it with some articles from their blog, but all of the private sale money that they got, not necessarily via CoinList, but just in general, they have a vesting period, like you said, and in the way that a lot of these work is that it's not just one day, say in 2021 or something, all of a sudden everybody's coins are unlocked, right? That's not the way that it works. Generally, it's done on a staggered rate. Sometimes there is that kind of one day unlock, which you would call like a cliff unlock, but generally it's staggered. So, maybe 3% every month for, 33 months or something like that. And, I would imagine that we're starting to see some of those early stage investors who have tokens unlocking, every month. Maybe they're selling a portion of them, and perhaps there's just too much selling pressure on the open market versus the buying pressure right now, because not too many people know about it yet. But that's always something to keep in mind when you're looking at a new blockchain project. If you want to grab the tokens and buy some of those, bear in mind kind of that fact with early stage investors and the fact that their tokens are starting to get unlocked.
Yeah, and what's the structure there? If there's no structure there in terms of lockup investing periods, then guess what? That's a big major flag.
Right, you run into like an Algorand situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And I was listening to Unchained, like Lawrence Shin's podcast with Dragonfly. I think Dima, you put me onto that, so I appreciate that. But they were kind of talking about all of these different scalable networks that are Ethereum competitors, Ethereum killers, and how they're trying to compete with Ethereum when it has that head start. And having a $30 million fund is one of those pieces of ammo for these networks. If you have funding to bring over devs, that there's not a better way to do that, in my opinion. I mean, people need capital to fund their projects. You could have the best tech in the world, but right now the community lies with Ethereum, and one of the ways to do that is bringing over people via money. Now, is this in their tokens? Is it Nervos tokens, or is it just some type of capital that they got from their pre-sale or some type of private sale?
Yeah, the article's in the block. It doesn't say specifically, but it's denominated in USD. So okay. I would imagine it's either the tokens are being sold into USD, which hey, maybe there's your selling pressure, or perhaps some of the backers that they have are kind of all coming together and putting together that grant. That we see that a lot. We see that with Tezos. So
got it. Yeah, I would honestly like to see a more like a better model where you actually I guess you really couldn't do this, but if you could go to a Dapp and say, hey, once you hit X amount of users or X amount of volume, this amount gets unlocked over time, as opposed to kind of doing the Ethereum approach where Consensus kind of just funded all of these projects that ended up being bullshit, lost a ton of money, although they have, Lubin's got a ton of money to be working with, so it's no skin off his back, or at least not a lot. But it would be cool to have like benchmarks to see like how you could fund dApps over time. But I'm the next story here. I got the blockchain project Elrond. So that's another kind of scalable protocol, scalable network. Their gaming app is being launched on the Samsung Galaxy Store. So this is going to be on like Galaxy S10s. Obviously, that story came out like 2 or 3 months ago, where Galaxy was going to support blockchain projects, and I even think they have a wallet that supports, and it's actually in the article, it supports Bitcoin, Ethereum, a couple other small tokens, Ergo token. But basically, this app is coming to the Galaxy Store. It's on the Elrond network. The ERD is, I believe, their token. It's kind of a play to earn. We've talked about blockchain gaming for a long time, but they have like a play to earn model where if you're playing this app, and I have to specify that it isn't a dApp at this point. I think they're planning to do that in the future, but right out the front, it's gonna have mostly centralized features. But through playing the game, you can earn their ERD token. It goes into your Samsung wallet if you do have that phone specifically, and yeah, that's leading the way for adoption. We've always said gaming is going to be one of those avenues. It's a wait and see approach, and we'll see how popular this game becomes.
Yeah, there's another interesting story that we'll get to really towards the end of the episode that has to do with Tron and some of the things that Justin Sun has been pushing. But Samsung is really at the forefront of this with kind of mobile gaming and blockchain. It'll be interesting to follow kind of them versus Apple, who I think Apple has not really, put any sort of emphasis on this. They've even gone so far as to kind of remove a lot of the, cryptocurrency focused apps from their iOS app store. But yeah, I mean, this is, to be honest, right? Like crypto gaming, a lot of times, these cool games come out and they seem to really be all NFT focused and kind of, buy CryptoKitty early, you try and get lucky. It's kind of like a lottery, store of value kind of thing. But we're really starting to see, I think, some major money moving into this space and some major things happening where you could see, 6 months, a year, 18 months down the road, some game that, even if it's not fully decentralized, like you said, Q, but it rewards you for your play, right? You get paid to play versus having to pay to play, right, as we've talked about before.
Yeah.
If one of these takes off, I mean, it's just, all the horses are leaving the stable, so to say.
Yeah, we need kind of a viable product, and we need to see it work in real time, and then everyone will kind of know, hey, this is actually the model that we need to go with. Right now, it's kind of just tinkering and seeing what happens. Just from the article, it says Minsu, so the actual CEO's name, if I can pull it up here, let's see, Benemin Minsu. I'm probably butchering that name, but it says Minsu told the block that Battle of Elrond does not have any non-fungible tokens and that only ERD token is used. Where Gods Unchained has that NFT and it's 1v1 trading card game. Battle of Elrond is a fast-paced Diablo-like PvP arena. So just a little bit of note there as far as blockchain gaming goes. If you have a Samsung, phone and you have a Samsung wallet and you want to try this game out, please let us know how it is. Once it comes out, it says it's going to be launched in Q1 2020. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, just a really quick comment before we move along with the regards to Apple that you mentioned. I think in general Apple is kind of more risk averse when it comes to deploying like new technology and new ventures, where Samsung is essentially very good at experimenting. They'll start experimenting with new tech, new games, new things like that, and they'll see which ones catch on. And then Apple is pretty much the ones that waits and then like, okay, cool, that works. Let's do it as well,
That's a great point.
But so with that being said, let's move along. We got I don't know why I always cover the SEC stuff. Like, I don't know why you guys always push this on me, but this is something. Yeah, so we have news coming out. Well, we kind of talked about it quite a bit already. It's ICOBox. ICOBox, for those that are not familiar, they're what used to do back in the day when ICOs were popping. They were basically helping people incubate and start ICOs if you had an idea. So you had an idea, they do everything from like writing the white paper, getting investors, all of that stuff from the beginning
like
to the
ICO consulting firm.
Yeah, exactly. I met like the owners at Consensus. They're Russians, so naturally, I had a conversation with them about like what's going on. But I did some due diligence and I talked to a couple other people and I found out that, they're not really that good. As a matter of fact, they're, quite toxic. So I was like, okay, well, we're not going to look for.
Wait, in what way were they toxic?
So in terms of the quality of the work that they promise and what's delivered. So they would promise one thing, but they would undeliver by a huge amount, because what they would do is they would collect the money for the consulting and then they'll go out in the market and find people to do those jobs in a very short period of time. So they scramble and they find these contractors that do like shitty job. And basically, that doesn't fit the expectations of investors and so on. They also promised returns on the ICOs, which is that huge piece there. And of course, SEC, picked it up and they've been kind of talking about ICOBox for quite some time. And recently, they hit the founder with $16 million in a fine that he has to pay. And I think there was like a little bit that was like $190,000 in a civil suit that he had to pay as another fine. And they're talking about how basically it's going to give him they're going to give him like about like 16 days or something, or like 12 days to like pay that fine. Yeah, which is
$1 million
like
a day.
yeah, exactly. So and from what I understand, I think they are located in Canada. Yeah, so and they're also they said that they're gonna permanently ban that guy from ever dealing with securities.
Right.
It's like
put the old blacklist on him. Man, this brings me back. And one day, because I feel like a lot of people don't know the full story of ICO, or I think it would be really cool to like go month by month, because it was like a very short period. We could go month by month, but one of the things that was a like internal struggle within ICO Alert is how many disclaimers we needed to add, and people would be like, "That's too much," and the other side would be like, "Hey, we need to be careful with this." So I'm glad we handled all of that stuff well at ICO Alert, so we don't have a $60 million fee that we need to pay now.
Yeah, those we worked with a lot of folks when we were all at ICO Alert, and like you said, it was a good time kind of while it lasted. Obviously ICOs have basically died from there, but you can't raise money and promise one thing and then basically do nothing, which is what they did. They launched their ICO token saying that they were going to have hundreds or thousands of these ICO customers, and the token would represent the fees that these customers paid. And then of course, as ICOs died, so did that token, but money was never returned. So good times, man. Good times.
Nice. Well, let's move into Tether.
Yeah, so speaking of kind of shady dealings here, and this is or private dealings, or kind of black market dealings, whatever you want to call it. This is a story that came out on CoinDesk a few days ago that I think has much broader implications, not just for crypto, but for the economy as a whole. So the story basically goes that Tether, USDT, right, the stable coin from Bitfinex that is seemingly always in the news for good or bad reasons, one way or another, has basically started experimenting with a privacy feature by running a cross-chain swap from Ethereum to Blockstream's new Liquid sidechain, which is basically a Bitcoin sidechain. So they use this kind of new quote unquote confidential transaction setup that allows for privacy in the unspent transaction outputs. So essentially it should shield how much money is being sent back and forth to people. You look at that just as is, it's kind of like, okay, whatever. Tether's experimenting with privacy features. EOS has done this, a variety of other cryptocurrency projects have done this. But when you build in the context of Tether and Asia and, China's new digital currency and the trade war and all of these kind of various news pieces, and you understand that, believe it or not, Tether's kind of growth in the Asian markets of just moving cash peer to peer, essentially outside of the traditional financial markets, has grown like crazy. You can start to see why Bitfinex is doing this, right? Because as this kind of quote unquote shadow banking continues in Asia, you're going to start to get governments clamping down on, say, for example, in China, their non-digital currency transactions. But if Tether is able to implement a privacy feature, that's big for that kind of shadow banking, for that, outside of the financial system work to continue, all of that money to continue to be moved. So I think there are much broader implications here than just kind of them experimenting with privacy. But definitely wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it as well. Am I tinfoil hatting this too much?
Is that a tinfoil hat? No, it's like a regular hat.
There's tinfoil.
You guys have more experience here, and Dimitri definitely, but it does remind me, they're talking about front running and things like that. And I think the story just broke yesterday about CZ talking about dark pools with Binance. So you guys have way more experience, but that does remind me of these Flash Boys, this Flash Boy story, and seeing what we could do. But I guess privacy tool which blinds asset values on public ledgers couldn't eventually somewhere down the line. Never mind. I'm going down that rabbit hole. But go ahead, Dima.
Yeah. So interesting stuff with Tether has been happening between China and Russia. Also, they've also used Tether to test settlements when they were doing transactions. And naturally, you have a next move which shields the view of these transactions where you don't know that it's happening, which is very good for censoring it. That's from just cross-border payment settlement system side, how it will benefit. But also in regards to front running, like you mentioned, Q, the good side to this is what they talk about it in an article is, now you can, track how much Tether is going, let's say, to a specific exchange, to let's say a big investor wants to load up on BTC, but it's like, all right, we have 100 million Tether that just loaded up on Binance. Like, we know
what's happening.
What's happening. Somebody's gonna is gonna try to get in, so the price pumps, and then that investor is essentially now slipped based on that. So now the market price is way higher and his entry is going to be harder to get to. So when you have this tool, you can have these investors that hop in into exchanges, and they can slowly get into the product without disturbing the market, and letting people know that hey, I'm out here shopping for BTC.
So yeah,
go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, essentially, right, like the underlying problem that I guess Tether is getting at, whether it's shadow banking and just moving, say, money out of China, or it has to do with trading or investment, like you're saying, Dima, is that if Tether now exists on the Ethereum blockchain, all of those transactions are public, right? They can be tracked. So essentially what Dima, you're saying is that if a ton of money is moving to an exchange, a ton of Tether's moving to an exchange, people can reasonably infer that that's going to be used to buy Bitcoin or other crypto, and it's going to pump. But whether it's dark pools like CZ is talking about, where the size of the order and the orders themselves aren't basically publicly listed on the order books, or it's an actual feature on the blockchain. I think while it has broader implications, I think it's also just a good sign of the cryptocurrency market as a whole maturing, right?
Absolutely.
Showcasing some things that the traditional financial markets have seen for some time.
Yeah, we definitely have some like this in traditional finance, where go ahead, sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, this seems like kind of like an invisibility cloak for whales, essentially. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be used kind of peer to peer when you're talking about retail investors like you or me. I mean, obviously you have Monero, and I don't really understand the back end of privacy transactions, right? Like, I think Monero uses a process of mixing transactions together. And then one coming out on the other end and being private that way.
Decoys, they call them, essentially.
Yeah, so this doesn't seem like that. It seems more that it's just like blinding the asset value. So I wonder how that differentiates itself. But this is a cool story, and I think you guys touched on it well.
Yeah, I mean, the answer there to your question is generally, like, at least what I lean to, is that it's kind of semi-private and thus not as good as Monero. But I'm a big Monero fan. But the final point I'll touch on here before we talk Bitcoin Cash and SV and whatnot, is that the other aspect of this that I think is interesting is that when Tether moved from Omni, which is a much older blockchain, to ETH, a lot of people were worried that was going to congest the network. But I think in them doing that, it was a goal for ETH to basically show all of this kind of more real world stablecoin finance happening on its platform, right? I mean, Tron has done this, right? Like they've now allow for Tether to run on the Tron blockchain. And I think that's part of this as well, is that Blockstream in their liquid sidechain says, okay, hey, how can we incentivize people to use Tether on our blockchain and thus show activity and thus show value? Okay, well, hey, let's come up with this, this interesting new privacy feature, and thus then we'll get all of these, whales using it instead of them having to use the more public ETH. So it's a wild world, man. There's a lot happening.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah, they're adding a value basically, instead of just having, hey, we have Tether on our network, just like Tether on any other network. The value out there is privacy. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
100%. Well, Q, I am drinking corn beer over here in
That's the beer of my people. What are you talking about?
in honor of Bitcoin, which has been doing well these days. But Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV have also been running a little bit, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. As far as Bitcoin SV, there's kind of a narrative being played out around that. But I do want to shout out to Barry. Barry made his way into the chat. We love when he makes his way. He said, "I just heard that taxation is theft and thought I would come and let you guys know." And then we proceed to talk about shiny hats. As far as the tinfoil hats, he also just commented and says ETH needed something to get away from that CryptoKitty grinding to a halt scenario. So it was he. I'm
probably talking about the Tether. Yeah, I mean, if Tether fully moved off of ETH and went fully, onto Liquid, it would, I would say, free up some of the network.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good. Well, we got Bitcoin SV here. A lot of this has to do with the story behind Craig Wright and the Courier, and obviously they're in court right now. And apparently via the story, and this is via Decrypt, and I'll pull it up on the screen here, but this is via decrypt.co. News site we like to follow. Basically, BSV and Bitcoin Cash have definitely hit. I think they're up somewhere like 12 to 15%. But essentially, I guess the story behind Bitcoin SV would be that there was that Craig Wright Courier that was said to be on his way to Craig and was going to get him the keys to, I think, billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. And also there were some, and I'm going to read directly from the article here. Wright has reportedly submitted more than 420 documents to the plaintiff involved in the case. This is the case that they're obviously in court with that lawsuit. But one of these documents supposedly discloses a secret Bitcoin stash that may be worth billions. So, the Bitcoin Cash, price, I don't know if they're correlated at all, just being, Bitcoin hard forks themselves, but obviously SV has a little bit of narrative behind its price jump, but I'm not sure what the cash price jump is from. I don't know if they had a fork or what they did, but if you can.
So both are coming up or have already halved, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had the Litecoin halving, I think in late 2019 it was, or 2019 at some point. And, you saw the price pump like crazy and then dump back down. Cash and Bitcoin SV now, are following that same kind of halving narrative. I think that's kind of the overall reason for it, but who knows? Either way, if those three pump before the halving, hopefully Bitcoin does the same.
So maybe the courier arrived and he started buying, Bitcoin SV, which essentially pumped the price up.
Yeah, that could definitely be it. I saw something. I think it was like on December 30th or New Year's Eve about how, Craig Wright was saying like, oh, I have something I'm going to launch at midnight on New Year's Eve that's going to destroy Bitcoin. And, next thing you know, like the first few weeks of January are super bullish for Bitcoin. So,
I really like Australians, and Craig Wright gives them a bad name, so
100%.
like I don't think there's an Australian that I don't like, although I think Richard Hart is also an Australian. I'm not sure though. The guy behind Hex, but yeah, definitely Craig Wright is not a good example of the nice Australians we've met over the years via crypto. But yeah, man, I read an interesting story on Twitter about these halvenings with the hard forks, the Bitcoin hard forks in general, and that the price for like running a node and the rewards you get obviously are dynamic, but they also kind of are set with these price halvenings. And they were saying that basically you can get like a death spiral of some of these chains with the halvening, because as more people leave, it becomes less and less profitable, and then you kind of have a situation where you're chasing yield. And so like when a yield goes beyond like when they can just literally switch a couple lines of code and mine, Bitcoin Cash instead of Satoshi's Vision, or even, Bitcoin Core, regular Bitcoin, you would have these death spirals of these chains. So it will be interesting to see as these continue to have, and Bitcoin is the same way, but it's obviously on a longer timeline. So yeah, super interesting, man.
Yeah, that was, and just to clarify, I think I saw the same thing, right, where it was basically that the theoretical speculative kind of action happening was that Bitcoin miners were going to move to, or excuse me, yeah, I think it was Bitcoin miners would move to Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV before the halvening. But then as it halved, they would move back to Bitcoin or vice versa, right?
Yep.
So Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, like let's say those miners as well, if they're mining there, but then there's a period of time where it's easier to mine on Bitcoin before the Bitcoin halving, well, why wouldn't they, switch over to Bitcoin per your point?
Yeah.
So,
and there was an interesting article that I was going to touch on later, but might as well bring it up now because it does make sense. Somebody had tweeted out, and I'll pull it up here, about how to destroy a proof of stake network in 5 steps. And essentially, okay, so the guy's name is Lucas Nuzzi. He's on Twitter. But basically, his main point was when proof of stake networks, like all of the proof of stake networks maybe on Staked, when they introduce kind of that intermediary of stake.us into their reward process, when you keep the user away from the network, you start to get situations where, just like you said, it's more profitable to be on this network this week, and then this network the next week, and then so basically what you have is people that are just chasing yield, and those aren't valuable to the network over time like they're supposed to be. They have no stake in the system, right? That's skin in the game. It's really just chasing yield. So as you introduce these intermediaries, you start to get less secure networks because people are always moving to each network because it's become so easy, where, a year, 2 years ago, it wasn't that easy.
Yeah, I mean, going even one step further, a half step further with Staked, right? They have their new kind of robo yield opportunity, as they call it, nicknamed Ray, where of all of or some of the various proof of stake networks that they exist on as a node, they kind of average them all out across this Ray, right? And this robo advisor, this kind of robo yield advisor, will move back and forth between, move assets back and forth between each node to get the best yield. Yeah. So it's happening on a more automatic basis as well. And as I'm sure we will continue to see with kind of more sophistication coming into proof of stake networks, you're going to see more and more of these, kind of sophisticated or hedged setups occur, where, like you said, Q, there are now these kind of like middle layer or middlemen who are pulling users away from the network itself.
Yeah, and that only compounds, like it's saying in this tweet thread, when you introduce synthetic assets and you make it even easier to trade a certain asset and not have it in your possession. So cool story, man. Cool stories all around there.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and as the final point before Dima talks about the interesting Bitcoin options starting here, but shout out to Tezos then, because based on all of that, Tezos has something like an 80% participation rate in their governance proposals, based on total stake. So pretty impressive. You do not see that across other protocols, but anyway.
Yeah. Before I jump into options, can I have your charger?
Yeah. we don't want you dying. Don't die on me.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, big news as I predicted for 2020.
This guy is a shit. I love it.
I like it, man. He's getting confidence, dude.
Options, right? I was mentioning that 2020 options are going to be big, and we were being expecting CME Group to come out with options. Back kind of front random on that, and they released options, but the popularity has been kind of slow on that side. So we have CME Group that basically came out with options that you can do on Bitcoin. They're cash settled options, which is great because for several reasons. Like I've explained in the past, that options is a product of itself that allows participants to do certain things like hedging and creative positioning when it comes to like Bitcoin. And essentially what it does, it smooths out the price discovery for Bitcoin as we have these type of products like options. So I'm excited actually to start including that in Dimitri's desk, because now it's going to be interesting, because we've been following CME futures on Dimitri's desk to see how everybody's positioned there on the futures market. But now we're going to also take a look at options, because in traditional finance, options are huge and a lot of people follow big expiration dates. So if you have a big expiration date for a Bitcoin option, that has a lot of interest in it, then that can actually affect the spot market as well. Now, a lot of people might ask, like, well, it's cash settled. Well, how does it affect the spot price of Bitcoin because it's not settled in Bitcoin? And the answer to that is that there's actually arbitrage that happens between the spot and the futures that essentially trickles down from futures that are not settled in Bitcoin, that's settled in cash, that trickle down into the spot market of Bitcoin that is settled in actual Bitcoin. So I think it's going to be super interesting. I'm excited to do that on Demetrius has to talk about these expirations and see how that will affect the spot market, because we've been following the CME futures and we see how that's affecting the spot market, or how they're calling the shots on in terms of BTC moving higher or lower. So I'm super excited for this one.
Yeah, and the other piece of the story that was interesting to me, albeit coming from somebody who I don't necessarily trust a ton when it comes to their kind of point about crypto, JP Morgan, they said that these Bitcoin options are supposedly hitting the market, today, right. From CME with a ton of high interest, a lot of open interest from the traditional markets, which we have not typically seen, right? Like obviously Backed came out and it was very slow, and then you have a day where the market moves to 5-10%, and obviously Back's volumes go up a bit. So do you think, Deem, let me ask you this, do you think that some of this interest from the traditional markets in options could affect futures, which then futures can obviously affect spot? Is there some possibility there that open interest could, high open interest in options could help or hurt Bitcoin?
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, it will have an effect on price, but we can't say if, for sure that it's going to be like, help or, or be bad. But in regards to like Backed and CME, I think the CME group is going to have way more interest from the start than Backed, just because CME group is a huge player in traditional finance, and these guys have been around in commodities business for ages, and they're like basically, fully regulated, super cool with everybody in terms of big banks. Yeah, they run the game, you know what I'm saying? So, and then you have Backed that's owned by ICE, which is like, where is it from? So I think that's a huge factor for like JP Morgan mentioned, they're coming out and saying, hey, this is, there's a lot of interest in this because CME group is releasing it. And I think CME group options are going to be picking up and outpacing other options platforms that are available there. We have right now, FTX, I think, offers options.
They actually just launched it on Friday or Saturday, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly. So like, but the thing is, from FTX standpoint, like you can't really compare that to CME group, regulations, everything, like, all that stuff. No big player like a bank is going to be trading with FTX. Let's be honest.
Right.
But yeah, from the side of affecting, like the options affecting futures market, essentially, the pure value of option is essentially to mediate your risk, right? To hedging. It's a hedging tool. Now, unwinding of certain hedges can affect futures and the spot price that will eventually trickle down. A lot of things that occur in traditional finance with options, where you have big options expirations, let's say a call option expiration at a certain price, and the stock just dumps, like, right, before it expires, and then the next day it just pumps, or on the next contract it pumps. So a lot of these things I want to start tracking with BTC and start figuring out how these options from CME Group are affecting the spot price, and see if there's a relationship there. So that's going to be super interesting. I'm excited about that.
I know we've been waiting for the CME options to launch for a long time. What's the next kind of I would guess like date that we're really like looking forward to? I know like before Backed launches, we were like, oh man, like can't wait for Backed to launch CME now. And so what's the next kind of institutional, I guess not goal point, but what am I looking for? Checkpoint.
Right.
ETF.
ETF.
Yeah,
Okay.
ETF. Yeah.
The ETF pump is going to be nuts.
Yeah.
I think there are many more questions about when that will be, though, just based on the way that the ETF approvals work. There are a lot of people pushing for them. I mean, now we're at a point where obviously You have a lot of kind of ETPs in various countries, or various funds that involve Bitcoin in some way. We were talking about a Bitcoin futures fund towards the end of last year. It launched in New York. So I think the ETF is coming. I think it will happen, and I think it will make a big impact, especially because a lot of times those ETFs are not super price sensitive, right? Especially understanding the pitch that Bitcoin has, right? If you see options take hold, you see regulated futures take hold, you see spot return with retail, basically what you're going to see is hopefully the SEC say, okay, we're at a point here where the market is mature enough that not having an ETF is just unnecessarily restricting those investors from Bitcoin. So this new digital gold, this new store of value asset, should hit the market in as a Bitcoin ETF. Boom, approved. People flood in, big pump, goes down like crazy.
The whole cycle.
Big dump, whole cycle. People are learning about it. Having probably has happened already. As I said at the beginning of the episode, right? Like 2020, I think in many people's minds is shaping up to be a pretty significant year for Bitcoin and for crypto overall.
I was going to say on that comment, I think it mentions in an article about how when CME futures were released, we had that huge bump and then we had that dump, right? So, and now everybody's like talking about, well, they're releasing options now. There's maybe something similar is going to happen with volatility, but I don't think it's going to be to that big of a event.
I hope not.
But yeah, exactly. But what also another thing I want to.
Hey, this isn't Dimitri's desk, man. Come on.
Final
what do you
point.
got? What do you got?
This is one of my favorite topics. As you can see. Oh man, I just got it out of my head now.
I guess it wasn't that important. Huh?
It was for ETF side. So from an ETF standpoint, so usually you have the market actually matures and starts releasing products like futures, options, and all those things before the actual ETF comes, right? There's no such thing as the ETF comes first, and then and then you have futures, options, and everything else there. So I think that we are moving along as we have these regulated entities like CME Group starts releasing these products. They're tested, the volume goes through them, and then you have that's ETF that's finally there, that's available for the market once it matures. So I think it's a normal timeline. I think crypto is trying to front run that with the ETF and hoping for that to come through sooner. But
that makes sense.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, we got a ton of points. We covered a ton of points. We actually have one more point. Sorry, Mike, I kind of front run you there, but I just wanted to shout out everybody in our chat because it's been a second. We had Mr. Sheffield say Bakkt is possibly going to be a bigger player now that Kelly is a Republican senator. I don't really follow the politics is that New York? What
Georgia, I believe.
Georgia,
yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's an interesting point. You guys could talk on that, but we did have that one last Bitcoin point.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, right? Anytime you can kind of put a pro Bitcoin person in the Senate, that's huge. So I think time will tell as to kind of where that goes. And I believe she was put in place as somewhat of an interim setup. I think maybe somebody was like retiring or something of the sort. So there are some details there that we need to look up. Feel free to pass them in the chat, Mr. Sheffield. But the final point I have here on Bitcoin is that we've talked in previous episodes kind of about these various indicators on Bitcoin, right? Whether it's it's kind of the overall number of addresses, or say the dollar denominated size of transactions, or it's anything to do with hash power, right? All these kind of various indicators that people use together and collectively to show that Bitcoin is healthy or unhealthy at any point in time. And a lot of those have been trending up. The last Layer1Live I was on, which was like 6 months ago.
That was last year.
Last year.
Yeah, literally last year.
Literally last year. We talked about how Google Trends on what is Bitcoin price, how to buy Bitcoin. These have all kind of finally started to tick up, right? That's an indicator that shows retail interest is growing again. Well, there's another one that CoinDesk highlighted a few days ago about essentially how for the first time since 2017, there are over 10 million Bitcoin that have not moved in over a year, right? Which obviously, denotes the fact that you have a lot of people holding Bitcoin for one reason or another. Are they holding it because they feel that the price will be higher at a future time and they'll be able to sell it, for more, dollars? Are they holding it because they're still so underwater from 2017 that what's the point of selling it now?
Yeah.
But all in all, generally, this is another one of those indicators that people look at to say, okay, there is a ton of Bitcoin that is off the open market. It's being held in, in private wallets that people aren't moving, which is obviously, theoretically decreasing the supply on the open market.
Which is the interesting side of it is also like the fact that it's at the highest since 2017. Yeah.
I wonder if lending, getting involved in the situation in the past year has anything to do with that. I mean, people are holding longer because they're able to get yield by just holding, as opposed to needing to make a ton of short-term trades to kind of get yield.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. That could definitely be a piece of it, because those are all going to be in custody providers, right? Not gonna you take that 8% or that 5% or that 2% every year to basically not touch it. But either way, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, let's throw that out to the listeners here. What do you guys think is the reason behind, and what was the title of the story here? It said
essentially 10 million Bitcoin haven't moved in over a year.
Got it. All right. What do you guys? Yeah. I want to see what you guys think about what the reasoning behind that is. Where did they get that picture of Dima?
What?
On the article.
Oh, really?
That's basically just somebody sleeping with their headphones on.
Oh, that's funny.
Anyways, all right. Well, we are now. You like that?
Wrecked.
Great shirt too.
We are 56 minutes in. We appreciate everybody that's up to this point. Listen to us, and I think we got a couple more comments based on what I just asked, but we have to move into ETH now. We've got ETH, we've got EOS, Tezos, IOST. We got a ton of stuff to get to, so this has to be a lightning rounds, or at least a couple of them. So based on ETH, we have one huge story that's actually being, and the story has to do with a tokenization of a player contract in the NBA that's actually getting launched today. Now, there isn't many details, but Spencer Dinwiddie, who I believe plays for the Brooklyn Nets, the story dropped like 3 months ago that he was kind of probing the NBA on tokenizing his contract and having people, buy into that contract and get, paid out over a certain period of time. But it looks like he's going forward with that plan, and it's being launched today. Now, this is going to be for accredited investors, and I'll look into the article here and I'll bring it up for you guys. But basically, he's tokenizing his contract on the Ethereum blockchain. This is going to allow him to get paid up front, because he's going to kind of do an ICO style sale of his contract. So he'll get paid up front, and then the people that are holding this token are getting paid, as the contract continues to, go over time. Obviously, players are have a contract over a certain amount of time. I think his contract is for 34.5 million, a 3-year 34.5 million contract, and people are going to be paid out over time, these investors, and they're also going to get APR based on what they're investing. So super interesting concept. I think, adding financial gains to sports, we see is a very lucrative way to have essentially an idea. So you have fantasy football, you obviously have sports betting. These are really cool ways to make money via sports. And in one of Spencer's or one of Dinwiddie's points to the NBA was that it was going to drive more attraction to the NBA, and that's a point that I want to hit on, because the NBA has always been really super innovative when it's come to everything they've ever done, whether that's going overseas. They have huge followings in places like China, in places like Europe, but they also do really well in those post-game pressers. I think they've allowed their players a lot of freedom, and I think tokenizing sports contracts is going to be maybe the next iteration after fantasy football of people getting involved in actual the play on the field, the players on the field. So This is huge. This is big. I don't really I can't contain my excitement, essentially.
Yeah, I'm not a big NBA fan myself, but I can imagine if you kind of quote unquote invested in a player, the minimum is $150,000, right? Like Q did say, you have to be an accredited investor, but I would think I would watch most of his games.
Yeah,
right? Kind of at the edge of my seat. A couple interesting points. The first one is that, I guess the big hiccup with the NBA around this was that in his third year, he has the option to renegotiate his contract. So that was kind of, the NBA was pushing back and saying, I don't know about this. It goes against, some agreements we have, but he was able to kind of get that pushed through. So it's not the exact setup that he wanted, but still a pretty awesome setup for him, essentially, because as we were talking before the podcast, when I was kind of wondering to myself, like, why would I do this as a player? And, Dimitri pointed out to me, well, hey, you're going to get all of this money up front, right? So now Mr. Dinwiddie here is going to have the ability to get essentially his full contract up front, go out, use that money to make more money, right? Let's say he can, earn 8% every year on the money that he now gets up front. Well, if he has to pay, 2% APR or 3% APR on essentially this bond that he's offering these investors, he's keeping the difference there. He's keeping that 3%, that 4% difference, and actually making money on the money, that he's bringing in. So genius from this guy.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that this is going through a platform called Securitize. I guess they offer security tokens. It's also going to be with Paxos, so the Paxos stablecoin. So worth pointing out there. You can obviously see this as a starting point to tokenizing, players, right? Like
the world.
Tokenize the world. Let's start a website here, but I think that you'll eventually get to the point where if this does have success, you'll see a lot of people get involved in not only fantasy sports, but being able to buy into the players that they love. That's a whole nother way of interacting with people. You can almost, and I don't want to get to that point, but you almost get to the point where you can claim ownership in a player. I know it's obviously his contract. You don't own the actual player, but you're talking with your friends. If this becomes obviously available to not just accredited investors, but down the line, being able to, as a retail investor, say, not only do you have a stake, a portion of this real estate, you have a portion in your quarterback of your NFL team. It blows your mind. It does.
Yeah. It's not, I don't think it's too far to think that it could get there for retail, right? I mean, when you have players like Securitize who, are really one of the leaders in this, kind of securitization world for crypto, now you kind of have these $150,000 tranches, right? Where, enough people contribute, maybe it's a minimum of $10 into this 150K tranche that then, you have a certain kind of share or fraction of this that then, hey, can be traded on T0 for another player's contract because maybe Dinwiddie got hurt or something. So you want to trade out of that and you want to get in with, LeBron or something, right? I mean, it's I see you smiling over there, Q. It's fun, man. You'll have like a real time fantasy team that perhaps could make you more money if you can choose which ones will do well during the season, potentially down the road.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Pretty wild.
But capital arbitrage for that player where, he gets the capital up front and he arbitrages basically whatever he has to pay out to the investors and then what he makes on storing that capital elsewhere, for generating yield. It's crazy. Essentially it becomes like a derivative of his contract. And then, we also talked about, when I mentioned this, is that he's also mediating the risk. So in case, let's say, he has a contract, but in case that player gets hurt, and there's, he's not going to be playing, then, what happens to the contract in that sense, right? So he's also hedging his risk by taking the money up front, and the risk is passed along to the investors that put money on his contract. That's an important thing to that I want to mention for it as well. But yeah, it would be crazy if we continue down this rabbit hole, and like talk about the derivatives of it. Then you have these pools that get together that like basically gather money around so they can get a portion of this player's contract. And then you have that industry of itself like continue to expand. It would be nuts.
So when you talk about risk to the investor, I guess like what you really want to see as an investor is the guaranteed money. Right? Like like if you have a guaranteed set amount of money that this player is going to make, that's what you should be focusing on, not the total amount. Correct? Kind of like how the player would look at that when he's negotiating his contract.
Yeah, I mean, there's risk reward there, right? Like depending on, I'm sure APR is the APR that those that are buying this bond, hopefully it should mirror the risk that Dinwiddie gets hurt and for some reason now the bond is not worth what it was originally, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're getting 6% on top of basically giving this guy his money up front, that's a reward for taking on the risk that something happens where now he's not getting all of that that money over time. So
yeah, it's going to be open to the market. So the market will decide, the interest rates and the bond price based on his like performance. If things go south, if he gets hurt and so on, then
they'll try to resell it.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
That's where your T0 or whoever comes in to say, hey, you want to. I know it was getting 6%. Well, now it's a little more risky. So, if you offer 9% or something.
Yeah, because the bond price is lower. So they offer higher interest.
I don't want to get too far down a rabbit hole, but if you can do this with a professional athlete, why can't you do this with just any professional? Why can't you buy into any professional? Let's say some young upstart, young professionals trying to, tokenize himself. That's essentially what this player's doing, correct? Like he's tokenizing himself, right? Like, or his contract, but
his contract.
Well, his contract, but you have contracts that happen in every profession. Why can't you tokenize the contract of a CEO of a Fortune 500 company?
Yeah. I mean, if kind of the two ends of the spectrum, right? One are, let's say, tokenizing a startup, right? As we saw with ICOs, obviously that went wrong for many reasons, but I think the concept still exists and was really proved in a lot of ways. And then you have kind of the other side of the spectrum with, say, some guy tokenizing his NBA contract. Anything in between could technically be tokenized. I think one of the biggest limitations are the accredited investor laws, where then the open interest for these things can then theoretically prove, right? It can go higher, but you guys are laughing. Do we get a funny comment?
But that Barry is just coming through with fire.
Let's go through the comments real quick because we've had a ton. Let's see. We do have a ton almost. I almost have to go back. Okay, well, MetaCrypto came in. He said, hi, guys. ETH-based DeFi projects are increasing. He also said tokenizing any asset is becoming practical. Barry's talking about how when he started drafting back in the 90s, there weren't even computers. And Bonds, nice to see you comment for the first time, but he says, what about entire sports teams? Like, what if the NFL made a private chain and made 32 tokens for every team? Which brings up an interesting point, because I believe the Green Bay Packers are a publicly traded company. I think you have...
I don't know that they're a publicly traded company like they're on a stock exchange, but you are able to buy non-voting shares in the Packers. I know my mom's a huge Packers fan. She did that. You give $200, they give you some fraction of ownership of the Packers, but the shares don't do anything. They don't earn, you don't get dividend.
Shout out to,
you don't have any voting rights.
Shout out to Jake, one of our buddies in Pittsburgh. I think he tweeted that.
He did.
Yeah. Hey, you got to give him credit if you're gonna talk about that.
I knew it already. But yeah, very fair.
Yeah, but no, we have a ton of. This is obviously a really interesting topic because we're getting a ton of comments coming through talking about tokenizing, like you're saying, the world, but specifically this player's contract. And
we should have Securitize on. I'll reach out.
Yeah,
that'd be a great one we can talk through.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, we have to move on. The one thing I will say, and you guys can, wrap a bow on this as well, as we like to say, but the first thing I thought of, because he was also promoting the All-Star Week, because he's a good player. Spencer Dinwiddie's like a top probably 10-point guard in the league. One of the things I thought about, and like any crypto nerd, I thought about the EOS block producers and the fact, and hear me out real quick. He's able to tokenize and get more, like you're saying, more interaction with fans. Like that's one of his main points. What he's doing is essentially being able to go to his fans, and let's say this even moves to retail investors. If you're innovative enough, you can buy your way into these all-star games by offering a value to fans that they don't have with other players. In All-Star Week, you get more notoriety as a person. You can get brand awareness, all of these things, because he's offering something that other players aren't. A lot like the block producers that are getting votes based on APR. This guy is literally getting attention via being able to pay out investors, right? Like, isn't
right.
that, and the investors are more, they're financially incentivized to get this guy into the All-Star game, right? Because the more brand he has, the more contract he's going to get, and it all flows together. So that was just something I thought of right when the story broke.
Yeah, his popularity is essentially going to sell more seats in the Nets arena, which, then... Yeah, I mean, it's kind of goofy, right? Like when the story came out, the NBA hates it. It's like, why do you hate this? Like, this is so good for your organization. This is so good for the ownership. But yeah. Anyway, nice segue there for EOS, because that is the next topic we've got here. Shout out Q, because you gave me the more fun topic to talk about here on EOS. But some additional big news around their upcoming voice launch. So they basically announced that they poached a former Forbes executive to be the voice CEO, a person by the name of Salah Zelatimo. Apologies if I didn't pronounce that correctly, but essentially that was the Forbes global chief digital officer who did some pretty impressive things with Forbes. They were able to double the Forbes audience size by enabling an AI publishing platform called Birdie via Forbes, and doubled it to 110 million per month. So this it doesn't seem like it's just kind of like hey, we're stealing an exec from Forbes, like look at us, we're doing big things. It seems like this guy has some serious clout when it comes to innovating on kind of internet publishing or social publishing. So some other important points there that the Block reported. Brendan Bloomer, the CEO of BlockOne, has said that they've poured $150 million into the voice project, including obviously the infamous $30 million domain purchase for voice.com. There's some other things I saw on Twitter as well about kind of how it seems like they're starting to expand voice just beyond a social media platform. They're starting to think about, kind of some decentralized content publishing or streaming, or kind of some of these other things based on the news of YouTube banning crypto. So huge move by EOS. I think all in all it's very bullish from EOS. We've seen a pump from them. I don't know if that is a pre-voice pump, because they've said that the beta is coming on February 14th 2020, Valentine's Day. Don't know what the significance is there, but EOS, for all the kind of FUD out there and the issues with governance and all this, they continue to tread on. So
yeah, and these are everyone always complains about BlockOne's stash. Well, this is the stash going to work, right? This is the money that they're funding their new CEO. And Barry had a funny comment here. The Forbes guy was the head of digital marketing and has 1,600 Twitter followers. LOL. but we also have to give him a shout out, because EOS Nation gave Layer1 a shout out about our interview with Malcolm Cassell from Wax. So we were in their news segment, EOS Hot Sauce, and that was good. So we appreciate the shout out from EOS Nation. They're probably one of the best block producers, if not the best block producer, on the EOS network. But yeah, man, we talked before the show here about voice, and I honestly wish it was a little bit farther down the line, because I think we are doing good things with EOS. I think slowly congestion is getting worked out, and that has to do with the EOS 2.0 that I'll get to here in a second. But we're doing some good things with the SEC, and I hate to say we, but they are doing good things with the SEC. Just things feel like they're stacking dominoes here. We're kind of like putting good days on top of each other. And then we have this voice launch that is supposed to happen. I know it's a beta, but inevitably this isn't going to live up to the hype of user adoption, and we're gonna see whatever the fallout is from that. But there's no way that it's going to be what people think it is. Now, if they set benchmarks and they're like, this is how many users we want to get to, and this is all these all the guidelines we want to hit. if they do that, maybe the market reacts negatively to the benchmarks, but we get something that has more set guidelines going forward. I don't know if you guys kind of see what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it was pretty clear to everybody that probably at least the back half of 2018 and then a large portion of 2019, whether it was for EOS or for a variety of other projects that maybe had launched in 2016 or 2017, that there wasn't a lot of positive news happening.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hacks or kind of overall FUD or just bad news or lack of news, which could then be interpreted as bad things happening. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to Ethereum competitors, it seems like the pack is starting to narrow. It seems like you've got ETH who obviously have the developers and, the first mover, but then, you're seeing EOS kind of emerge as one of the stronger ones. You seem to be seeing Tron kind of emerge as one of the stronger ones, even if it's by kind of buying their own way there. Tezos, although their goals are not the same, are emerging. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I would definitely agree.
Yeah. Yeah, Bonds is pointing out here exactly what I'm talking about. So he says they have over $50 million marketing budget. He also pointed out that Dan said marketing that we've never seen before in crypto. So these are all like really just, we're going to kick this thing out of the water. This is going to be the greatest thing to ever happen. And it's not. Like, it's going to be great. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Like, I want it to be great. It's going to be great, but it's not going to be like, oh man, we had $150 or $1 million budget. We're going to, do
you think there will be a Voice Super Bowl commercial? I've heard that rumor going around.
I think that's a meme. I honestly think that's a meme. I don't think it'll happen, but who knows?
What happens with memes? Memes become real life.
True.
So that would be wild.
Memes become dreams.
Life becomes memes become dreams. But anyways, let's move on here. Not too much to talk on here. There's obviously a lot of code update. But BlockOne actually put out so more news from BlockOne. They put out EOS 2.0, which is their software update. I'm going to highlight it here on the video, but basically you have 4 main updates. You have a virtual machine update. So you have a WASM WebAssembly engine specialized for blockchain applications that facilitates more efficient use of system resources. You also have, it says, a EOS.io Quick Start Web IDE, which is something more to do with web applications running on EOS. Let's see. The main two that I want to get to are the authentication support and the multi-sig block producer support. So basically it has a widely accepted secure authentication standard that enables transaction signing without browser extension or additional software. And then you have the multi-sig for the block producers, which is a secure way for block producers to use different keys to sign blocks on primary and backup block production hardware. So again, we're not nobody here's from like Liquid Apps. We're not dealing with like second layer solutions and really diving deep on the code and all of this back end stuff. So if you guys are in the chat and you have good experience running this stuff, and maybe you're a developer, maybe you're a coder, you can kind of give us some insight in there. But basically just back end updates. Eventually this is going to get pushed live. I think whenever they release 2.0, whenever they BlockOne releases software updates, these tend to get pushed over a month's time. So like 1 to 2 months time, they'll slowly release a couple things. Block producers will start implementing it into their block production. So that's not gonna get too much into it on the podcast, but yeah, we'd love to get the guys from Liquid Apps, the Dapp network, to come and really take a good deep dive.
Have you talked to Pete lately, Dima? We need to get Pete.
Yeah. I'll talk to him. He speaks my language.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah,
literally,
literally speaks like,
break it down.
Yeah, you guys could have a full Russian language segment, man. You guys could do a whole episode.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess the only other thing with EOS that's not on here, and we do have to move on because we're getting pretty deep into it, is that EOS savings account is coming up again. Back in the day, I think like 6 months ago, maybe 4, they burned $38 million worth of EOS that was generated into this savings account. And that was from the original proposal for Dan. That's kind of EOS 1.0. the inflation rate, and some of it was going to a savings account that then the worker proposal system could, work out a way to fund dApps and fund all these different things with the interest that's being accrued in the savings account. Well, there was that burn like 3 or 4 months ago, and now there's $90 million in the savings account again. So there's going to have to,
One burn.
Something's going to have to happen here. And eventually the community comes to a point where everyone's arguing again about what to do with this savings account. Do we want to put it towards dApps, or do we want to burn it? I think the general consensus is that they want the community wants the savings account to go away. Because if you can, take away via that worker proposal system and vote in, the removal of this extra interest that's being funded into this, savings account, then you don't have to deal with this issue every time it comes up. And there's $90 million. There's a security issue. The community obviously gets all uptight about it. So, and then you have to pass a proposal. So all these things that could just be solved by making the savings account non-existent, essentially. So burning and then not having this extra interest.
Maybe the savings account will sponsor the podcast. That'd be pretty dope.
There we go. Yeah.
Boom. Vote for us. That'd be awesome. Well, moving on here, another, highly touted layer 1 protocol, as we like to talk about on the podcast. Tezos is in the news, but strictly because there's an interesting new DeFi platform being built on top of Tezos. This is going to be called StakerDAO. Which to me is kind of a shot at MakerDAO. It's as the headline on Business Wire reads here: StakerDAO launches platform for governing financial assets in a secure, decentralized, and compliant manner. So, essentially, the CEO of Tezos Capital has put in some money to this new StakerDAO project alongside Polychain Capital, which is one of the largest backers of Tezos, to launch an kind of updated, decentralized, compliant MakerDAO setup where some of the interesting benefits to staker over maker might be that there are kind of some governance aspects that now allow folks to vote on what decentralized financial products should be secured by StakerDAO, right? So if you just strictly think about all of the various DeFi products out there, for example, all the various proof of stake networks, be it Decred or Tezos or IOST, obviously ETH will be proof of stake down the road. StakerDAO is essentially saying, okay, well, instead of just using one single platform and running DeFi on one single platform, why not open this up to a governance setup where a multitude of different platforms can run their DeFi through StakerDAO. So not a ton of info on it yet, but what it sounds like they're attempting to do would really kind of take DeFi to the next step. If you haven't listened to the podcast we did with Kava Labs and Brian Kerr, great there. Kava is kind of taking it a half step or one step past Maker, where instead of having one or two different assets that you can collateralize your DeFi loan with, they're going to be able to do it across Bitcoin, XRP, ETH, Cosmos, right? A ton of different assets for collateralization. And StakerDAO is basically saying, well, no, we're going to go even further. We're going to break it out across basically multiple DeFi products themselves versus, say, even just multiple collateral that can be used on platforms. So it's interesting. I mean, I think we need a lot of clarity on kind of how this is going to work. They're talking about a governance council, and obviously they're building on Tezos. They have a big relationship with Tezos. So how is that going to kind of affect the governance of it and kind of the direction of it? But all in all, it seems like a huge win for Tezos.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an experiment to see how that's going to happen. The big deal with governance is like, you can have best structure, but in practice, things might still go wrong, which can negatively impact that whole project of itself. The interesting part I want to mention also is that, you mentioned that other places are starting to offer more of options when it comes to using certain tokens as collateral, right? And multi-collateral kind of structure there, we can use different tokens. But
Right.
what I want to mention is that I wonder what the margins are going to be there, like how much you will have to put up as a collateral, and how much can you take out, because considering like the fact that certain tokens have a higher volatility and higher risk rather than others. So given the fact that if you have to put up like 10 times as much of collateral, just to get that loan or whatever, then like who's going to be interested in that? I feel
Right.
like a lot of people will be like, well, I have to really put up so much collateral for this, then why would I do this when I can just move it to a different token that is not as volatile and it can have less I have less to put on as a collateral for it,
Or to a centralized platform where it's
right?
boom, one step easy. Yeah, I mean,
So I think those are some of the big points that I want to mention to watch out for that can be a risk for
overcomplicated kind of deal. Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting. Well, we got a couple more things here we've got to run through. So an interesting thing here, if you are a Binance user, as we all are, Binance US, right? We've been tracking them since they've launched. You can now get their app on both iOS and Google Play. So they've kind of been slowly adding new assets. That is now available on mobile. So that's a huge win there. I'm going to touch on some interesting kind of news here on Monero.
I was gonna.
Dima's got some.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
for the Binance US, I had one of my buddies that actually hit me up. He was like, "Hey man, let me buy some of this crypto stuff. How do I do it?" Right. So I was like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, just get on Binance." So he downloaded Binance on his phone, and I was helping him out like to how to onboard some cash onto the platform. From a user perspective, it's kind of a little bit confused. But also it was all in English, and English is not his first language, so maybe that was the issue. But anyway, so as we were going through the process, you basically have to like do a lot of verification there. Like you have to give them social security number. And there's 3 layers of verifications, and on mobile you can do 1 layer of verification, and then they tell you to go on the website to complete the rest of it. And it's pretty intensive. Like I think it was who's the company that does it for them? Trust, Prime Trust.
Trust.
Yeah, these guys. I think they're doing the KYC for Binance US. So it was a pretty extensive process, but the verification of itself was actually pretty quick. So once he did, everything, submitted all the documents, answered all the questions and everything, he was actually verified like within like a minute or 2. So I remember back in the day, Binance, the verification used to take like quite a bit of time.
It's getting flooded.
Yeah, exactly. So, but now it's actually pretty solid.
Nice.
So good stuff.
Gotcha. Very cool. So interesting little point here, right? For those of you who are interested in privacy stuff, just like I am, big Monero fan, they are supposedly considering something called Triptych, which will improve privacy and scalability. So a lot of info here. If you like Monero, but maybe you haven't looked into it a lot, some interesting info in this article. It'll be linked in the YouTube video after the fact. Give Q a few hours to get that up. There's also another, just kind of a general point. There's a great book called Mastering Monero. If you kind of don't understand really how it works, it's a great one to take a look at. But as we've, said with Tether and some other, needs for privacy, it's good to see, in my opinion, Monero continuing to kind of push push forward with some of the most intricate and certainly private aspects to their token and to their blockchain, whereas it feels like others are kind of just getting started. And we saw Monero pump quite a bit. I mean, I think it got all the way back up to something like $64 over the past week. So life in the market, life in Monero, some good things happening there.
Yeah, the volume on Monero is actually really good. I think, as we've seen that bull kind of come back, I think Monero is definitely one that's undervalued as with that, and that's not investment advice, guys, but I like the obvious value that Monero can have as a privacy, token, and having those private transactions. So yeah, man, that's good to see from Monero.
Back in the top 10.
Yeah.
Nice, dude. What did it overtake?
Probably Tezos at least.
Tezos, yeah. Tezos,
Stellar.
Yeah,
Stellar.
Stellar Tron. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I don't know if we're getting to that Justin Sun piece of news there before we get off here, but one thing Justin did yesterday that I wasn't too thrilled with was he talked about PewDiePie on DLive like it was a developing story, like it was like he had just decided that he was going to move to DLive, and it was not because of Tron, but at the same time where that happened, I think like 2-3 months ago. So just as much as I want to like Justin Sun, because I don't hate the guy, like I want to like the guy, he's doing good things, but there's no reason that he should be reporting PewDiePie as like a breaking story. But go ahead, sorry.
No, I agree completely. I saw that tweet. I mean, Justin, I feel like Justin Sun is like that kid on the playground who, you're like, hey man, like, let me, playing kickball. You're like, let me steal second base or something. He's like, yeah, okay, I got you, and you give him your lunch money and you go to steal second base and he throws the ball and tags you out. It's like, come on, man. Like, I thought we were cool. But yeah, I mean, just real quick on the Justin Sun, because Deem, I know you've been wanting to get to it on this kind of secret project that he's talking about, but I guess has supposedly announced already in a way.
Yeah.
Oh, what is this?
Yeah, no, it's basically the secret weapon that Justin is talking about, where BitTorrent and DLive is gonna succeed a lot and gain a lot of traction, and basically that is gonna be the Samsung mobile platform, but we don't have details on what it's gonna be.
Shocker.
Yeah. So we have to wait for that to develop, but it'll be super interesting to see. Obviously we know that DLive is great, BitTorrent is great, and how both of those things can succeed using the Samsung mobile platform. That's going to be up to speculation at this point, but we'll wait for more news.
Yeah, he's talking about like how they're going to add 100 million users.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. Like there's 100 million people with Samsung phones.
Yeah.
It's sounds good. Same old story.
I thought we heard that like 2 weeks ago when it first broke, but apparently we're talking about it again. So yeah.
Yeah. It's same story, just like the DLive, right? A way to kind of hype something, not wrap around it. But hey, it's working, right? I mean, Tron, whether it's real or not, that Dapp activity is up there. It's closing in on ETH, it seems. So he's doing something right. It's working to some degree.
Yeah, man.
I don't want us to come off like we're hating on Tron all the time or anything. It's just we want to make sure we're cutting through the BS for you.
Gotcha.
But final point here. I'll kind of preface this point with an interesting tweet that I saw this. I think it was this week from a famous crypto Twitter account that was basically saying that the 2020 blockchain bubble is going to be lit. And I think as we've seen with Tether starting to kind of make waves in the traditional space, we see Stellar and Ripple doing the same thing. So Stellar, or at least a new startup building on Stellar called LightNet, has raised $31 million, and from some pretty significant kind of venture folks as well. One of them essentially owns something like 9,000 7-Elevens in Southeast Asia. And if you go back, this is important because Stellar's goal has always been to kind of quote unquote bank the unbanked, right? That's been their niche. That's been what they've gone after, but they've struggled to kind of really gain adoption. They've had a lot of struggling airdrops, which we've joked about and certainly dumped ourselves. But if they can make the right partnerships and see those who maybe aren't crypto users start to use Stellar via some layer 2 solution or somebody like a LightNet, then I think you start to see a lot of that value come back to Stellar. But both Stellar, both Ripple, they seem to be kind of trying to replace Swift, and it seems that Southeast Asia is a big focus for them right now for whatever reason. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ripple has been in that cross border payment game for a bit with MoneyGram. Remember? Right. Yeah. So they've been working with them, and they've been expanding into other places. Like Thai Bank launches cross border payment app, using Ripple Network. unfortunately, the XRP guys are not going to see any of that because XRP and Ripple are totally two different things.
Right.
So, but yeah, those two are, which is interesting because they're essentially kind of competitors, right? But it's created by the same guy. So
right, yeah,
yeah, it was created by the same guy. So the guy created, XRP Ripple, and then he didn't like where the project was going, so he left to create Stella. So
yeah. So a lot of, like I said earlier in the episode, a lot of things happening behind the scenes. It definitely seems like 2020 is going to shape up to have a lot of like, shit moment kind of things happening. So
Absolutely, man. I think we covered a ton of projects today. That's probably the most stories we've ever covered in an episode. So let us know if that's, too many. If that's not enough, we'll continue to, discuss the topics and add more. But yeah, great episode, man. We had a ton of commenters as well. Bonds, it's good to see you for the first time. I think Average Joe just commented and say, let's get Liquid Apps on. So a ton of Liquid Apps fans in the chat, but we appreciate everybody, as we do these episodes. I think we're 94 minutes in, so right around our average time. So thank you again. We have a ton of guests coming on this month. We'll continue to do Layer1Lives. Dimitri will shill Dimitri's desk if you want to. When's the next one?
I was about to. You're getting, you catching on. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, 5 p.m. Eastern. Not a minute earlier, not a minute later.
Love it, dude. Love it. Well, all right, guys. Well, that was the episode today. Thanks for tuning in. Again, tier 1 for Sutler Ventures, the team behind Layer 1. So we'll celebrate that. Our voters will celebrate that as well. And yeah.
Yeah, man. We'll see you soon. Lots of good food, lots of good drink coming up. Snowball episode coming up this week. Check that out. It's a good start, man. I'm liking 2020 so far.
I'm liking 2020 as well, man. I'll see you guys on Thursday. We should record Layer1Live on Sunday while I'm still there. Let's do it.
Ooh,
Yeah. If we're not too hungover.
Right.
All right, guys.